This is Sergio Marrero, and today we're here at RBL1 Live with Abby Mercado, who is CEO and co-founder of Best Shot. So thanks for joining us, Abby.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's a real
Yeah,
pleasure.
we're excited to have you. So a little bit about Abby's background. She's a serial entrepreneur, a graduate from Vanderbilt. She currently lives in Denver and has a background not only in finance and the energy space as an investor, and now as a founder of Best Shot. So if you can share with the audience, what is Best Shot?
Yeah, for sure. So Best Shot was born out of my own experience as a fertility patient, something you never really want to go through, but I found myself going through it with my husband, Sean. And, we just really struggled with the medication process of IVF. Lots of people are diagnosed with infertility right now, 1 in 8 Americans. So we just uncovered a really big problem on, medications that I'm sure we'll talk more about as we kind of continue the interview. But essentially, Best Shot is a patient's companion in infertility. So it really helps them navigate the disease state of infertility, helping them order their medications, chat with their pharmacist. We think the pharmacist is just a really integral piece of how everything works. Pharmacists are currently underutilized. There are amazing pharmacists out there who just want to help. So ordering your medications, in-app payments, it's 2021. Let's pay for things online. This is the healthcare industry. So often that's few and far between, which is crazy to me. I was an outsider to the healthcare space a little more than a year ago. And I've taken a crash course in the past year, and things continue to surprise me. And so ordering medications was hard formerly. Now it's easy with Best Shot. And then secondly, we provide education on medications. So these are 50 injectables that you take in the span of 2 weeks to a month when you're undergoing IVF. That's a lot to learn. And we're really speaking to the patient population that is going through this. So, often millennials. And so we've curated all of our own text and video content on all of these medications that are self-prepared and self-administered. And then lastly, by virtue of being an IVF cycle, our regimen is constantly changing based on your hormone levels and based on your follicle numbers and follicle sizes. So your regimen is tweaked up and down by your physician, and it's straight up very difficult to follow, very difficult to track. So we're helping with that. And our last feature that's really exciting, we're helping patients manage their inventory. So we're focused really on cash pay patients. So this is a very expensive prescription, often $10,000. And patients are often over ordering medications. So we're trying to help calibrate the inventory versus the regimen and get that just more on track and save the patient money that way. So that's what Best Shot's doing today.
Amazing. So right now, I know, particularly for IVF, more companies, tech companies, are starting to offer this as a benefit. And can you talk about how IVF has changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's definitely a market that is growing and continues to grow. So we'll see about 400,000 IVF cycles this year. About 20,000 women are freezing their eggs. That's amazing. I'm so excited about family building technology. That's truly what it is. Egg preservation, fertility preservation, incredibly exciting. So the market's growing, but it has the potential to get much bigger. So I'll take an example, the country of Denmark, 1 in 10 babies that's born is born an IVF baby. And, from a demographic standpoint, people in America are not they're the same humans. There's nothing, particularly in the water of someone who lives in Denmark. So, we expect to see that type of growth in the US. What's really held this market back in the US has been access to care. So this is a very expensive treatment. As you noted, employers have started covering it. That's really important. But it's also important to note that 65% of cycles are still out of pocket. So if you think about those numbers, I took out a second mortgage that I'm still paying off for my IVF cycle. I paid $30,000 in our HELOC. And so it's a home equity line of credit there. That was in 2018. It's amazing how much the industry has really advanced in terms of just helping patients finance their cycles better. But that was the best option in 2018. My employer, a venture capital firm, you like to think as, tech advantaged and, forward thinking and advanced, didn't cover IVF. I think it's also important to tell this story. So, I had an unfortunate situation happen early on that we can get more into later, but what ended up happening, I was so kind of cost conscious, this was $30,000 out of pocket, that we ultimately transferred 2 embryos and they both stuck. And I had twins. That path was not easy. So, there's 2 beautiful lives. They're 2 years old. I hear them upstairs with my husband who's making them dinner. So yay, Sean. But I had a really tough pregnancy. I was very sick my first trimester. I missed, many days of work. I told my boss, sooner than I was comfortable with telling him, because I was missing so much work because I was so sick. I started getting like chest pains when I was 20 weeks pregnant. And I ended up being diagnosed with very rapid onslaught preeclampsia, which is a life-threatening disorder for pregnant women. And I delivered the kids at 34 weeks and 4 days. And they spent 19 days in the NICU, which that's $20,000 a day per kid. So if you do the math, my employer would have been better off covering my IVF cycle. And you hear stories like mine all the time. We do expect that, employers will continue to cover this amazing science for their employees for all the right reasons and all the economic reasons as well, like the story that I just told. But, we're seeing that take a little bit longer than we would like. And, our hearts really do go out to cash pay fertility patients. And that's how we've built our business, is really focusing in on the cash pay patients and helping those that are currently being underserved by our healthcare system.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think I think many people don't know the challenges until they are facing them themselves or going through.
Totally.
So, can you share? I would love to share a little bit more of your journey as a founder and how you ended up. You shared a little bit of the inspiration, short term, but coming out of Vanderbilt, you started investment banking. How did you go from being in investment banking and then moving to starting, a startup transforming the lives of those trying to, procreate?
Yeah. I'll tell you the whole story. So, I am originally a Texas girl, but Colorado is my home. And I went to Vandy and I graduated, and I was very focused on finding a job in investment banking. This was 2009, so the economy was not super great, but, straight up, my parents were like, you'll get a lot of skills if you do investment banking. I said, okay, I guess I agree with that. That's fine. So I, move into investment banking. It was horrible. I'm still in touch with, I still have many friends. I was working, 100 hours a week. So it was kind of like we were, stuck in this horrible little club where we were, still generating really good skills, which is good. But, I realized that was just ultimately not for me. And I realized that I'm not a rule follower. I'm a rule breaker. And that personality type isn't necessarily a fit in investment banking. So, and also being an Aries, I'm a natural born entrepreneur. And I was the kid who sold lemonade door to door. If not enough people were driving by, I would just, go to people's door and sell them lemonade. So I said, man, I feel like the startup life is something for me. And I randomly, kind of came across an opportunity that moved me out to Denver to work for a small small energy company that actually became quite large. And I also had the opportunity to start an affiliate, so be employee number one at a midstream company. So founded that company, helped hire out the team, helped get financing for that company, which was really exciting. And then where I really found something that made me tick in that company was doing sales. I loved sales. And
not many people do.
Yeah, no, it was weird. And, I guess it's a good thing. You always say the CEO is the best salesperson. So I hope that rings true because our team is small right now at Best Shot. But anyway, I did love sales. And then the energy industry crashed in 2016. And, I had found that, I had gotten, I definitely scratched the surface on like two aspects of the energy industry, but, I really wanted to move to the service side where I truly felt that we as an industry could make an impact with regard to technology. So I quite literally Googled oil and gas venture capital. It's like, this industry is kind of old school. Like, how do we make it better? Like, is there anyone thinking about this? And I ended up going to work for the oldest venture capital firm that invests exclusively in oil and gas technology. And then my world was opened up to software and all of the cool things that software can do to improve, the efficiency of human life and of humans. And, I loved it. I loved learning about software, invested in 3 businesses in particular. And, just really I was inspired by these founders. And, pretty early on in my experience at Altera, I noticed myself feeling pretty jealous of these founders. And I was like, something's off. Like, I feel like I need to go back to entrepreneurship. So that was pretty early on in my career. And so, I was very carefully kind of charting a path to go back into entrepreneurship while still learning everything I possibly could about software and about investing, because those are always valuable lessons to learn. So meanwhile, on the personal side, my husband and I were experiencing infertility. And, it was so tough. We got after it pretty quickly. We were trying for 3 months, which is a very short time to be trying and, getting worried. But I'm type A and I had a feeling that something was wrong. So we go into a fertility clinic. We were diagnosed with infertility. We did an IUI, which is kind of the typical precursor to IVF. It's less expensive, less invasive. It didn't work. And, our doctor sat us down and said, like, you guys have less than a 1% chance of conceiving naturally. We should really, think about like taking this a little bit more seriously. So this is really a shock to us. We were really young. So the primary determinant of, having challenges conceiving is maternal age, or the age of the woman. And I was 32. And I wasn't really in that age bracket yet. And, we are diagnosed, it was also male factor infertility, which, that's a whole nother thing to unbundle. People think that this is, a women's problem. This is a family problem. So that was a lot to work through as well. So, lots of mental health challenges for Sean and myself, in addition to, the loan we took on, the HELOC we tacked on to our debt stack, I guess. And so, we decided to do IVF. And so, generally speaking, an IVF cycle is split into 3 separate months. The first month is a priming month. The second month is a retrieval month. And the third month is the transfer month. And so the first month is the month where you're priming your body with the medications required to basically generate a lot of follicles with eggs inside them. The goal is to create as many eggs and then combine them with the sperm, genetically test them, and then transfer back the embryos that are deemed genetically normal and most likely to stick in a transfer cycle. So I was priming my body. I remember it so well. Sean and I were on a camping trip because #Colorado, that's what we do. It was Memorial Day weekend. And I had my cooler of medications. Another complicated part of this fertility journey is that, there's a lot of you have to keep the medications at a certain temperature. So anyway, we had this cooler. I was going back and forth from our campsite to the car, and, injecting this drug called cetrotide. And I was just being very dutiful. And long story short, I was pregnant and I didn't know it. And this was after being told that I had less than a 1% chance of getting pregnant. Sean and I together as a couple. So weeks passed, I wasn't getting my period, and I took a pregnancy test just on a whim, and I was pregnant, walked my way into my fertility clinic, and a nurse said to me, you're probably going to miscarry because you were on cetrotide. And then making matters worse, I took way more cetrotide than I was supposed to. And, it was, it was hard to follow the regimen. It was all paper-based. I remember having my regimen, like a picture of my regimen on my phone. And it was just confusing. Like everything was crossed out and highlighted, and it was difficult. Like, have you ever tried to read a doctor's handwriting? Like, it's horrible. So long story short, I ultimately miscarried. So super, super dark time. I've already told you all about my twins. So, that, we were ultimately successful in IVF, but, this moment alone of, the guilt I felt, like I caused my own miscarriage. Like, not a lot of women can say that. And like, that's very real. It's really, really real, really dark feelings. And, the more I kept digging into it, the more that I realized that, other people were messing up their meds too. I wasn't alone. So I kind of uncovered this just like treasure chest of just really bad treasures. Like all of these women were experiencing the same issue. So I'll make the rest of it quick. I've been talking for way too long.
No, I think this is an important to share, because I didn't realize what so you talk about egg retrieval. I have a friend of mine that was going through that process, right? To freeze eggs. And I had no idea what women actually had to do to go through the process. You talk about the multiple injections every day, the monitoring almost, daily. It's not only, expensive and it's a daunting. I was surprised that the medical system allowed individuals to do this to themselves.
Crazy. I mean, you're basically becoming a registered nurse with no training. And like the statistic that's so wild is that, so you take let's make the assumption, if you're paying for something, you're going to be more incentivized to do it right. So like, let's put a pin in that and come back to it. But so 65% self-pay market, and 22% of patients are not complying with their regimens. Like, they're definitely not incentivized to not comply. And even if you are paying, like you're still, or even if you have a payer on your side, if you're insured, like you still desperately want a child. It's the most human thing about us. We want to procreate. Most of us, not all of us, but most of us truly want to procreate. So yeah, it's a very human thing. And those numbers, the 22% of non-compliance, just says that something's up. Like, we've got to fix this. And, another crazy statistic is 5% of cycles that fail. So the average American undergoes 2.5 cycles of IVF. So $30,000 times 2.5, that's the cost of a baby for somebody with infertility. But so 5% of cycles that fail based on medication errors, like mine. Like, I'm a good example of that. And fertility clinics don't want that. Like, they have to report their success rates to the CDC, and they're doctors. They have good hearts. They want to provide good patient care. They want to see their patients have success.
And so can you talk a little bit about your product and service and how you came up on the startup side? Like, how did you come up with the business model and the way to serve these individuals? How does it work?
Yeah. So, man, lots of, Q&A. We had Sean and I came up with the idea, my husband, and then I entered a Techstars competition. And, I kind of presented everything that was just in my head, and Denver is such a great startup community that, it was like a kind of a hackathon that Techstars put on, and it was exclusively for women. So I was like, this is maybe perfect. Like, it feels a little scary. I currently have a job. Like, what if someone finds out? Good news, they didn't. Hi, Altira. But so I ended up, I won the whole thing. Based on coming up with a technology solution that applied to my pain points as a patient. And like, to be totally honest, the product hasn't changed that much since I conceived it in, it was, 2 years ago, which makes me feel really old. 2 years ago, I was 26 weeks pregnant, and I pitched, with a small team that I'd pulled together, and, pitched in front of a team of all female judges. And I wasn't sure if I was going to start the business at the point. I had to give birth to twins first. But I had all of these female mentors come to me and say, Abby, like, you're so passionate, like, about this. Your vision is so clear. And like, you have the skill set, like you're a software investor, like you can build software, like, you don't know how to code, but like, you can hire Per Marshall for that, who's our CTO. I did. And so, then we approached our medical advisor, kind of talked her through the feature set. She was my physician, Dr. Sarah Barton at CCRM. And she looks at me, and, it was kind of I disguised. I was like, hey, like, I called up CCRM and I was like, hey, Sarah, like, or Dr. Barton is what I called her. That, and I call her Sarah now. But hey, Dr. Barton, would love for you to meet Max and Annie. And then I approached her with this business idea, and I talked through all the features that I envisioned. And she was like, Abby, like, can I get equity? And I was like, I like that signal. That is a great signal. So she came on as our medical advisor. She took me to ASRM, which is the largest fertility conference in the US. It was in person in late 2019. And I had pulled together a video. So I hired a super talented designer, and he, I spoke to him about my vision, and he put together a bunch of wireframes. Like, there was no code behind the wireframes. And then we put together a video based on the wireframes. And I just, I had an iPad, and I just shopped it around this conference, and I met all these doctors, and they were like, this is so cool. Like, when you quit your job and start this company, like, come to us. So I quit my job, and we launched the business through Techstars in early 2020. And the feature set has, generally remained the same. We have kind of V1 of our product, having patients focus on, and cash pay patients, like, how do I pick a pharmacy? There are over 100 mail order specialty pharmacies carrying fertility medications. So how do I understand a pharmacy's value proposition? Number two, let's create some really cool content that people actually enjoy watching. Like, this is the TikTok generation. These are millennials. Let's produce our own videos. So we did that, put them in an app, and then adherence. And we, all with this regimen that's constantly changing, how do you stay on track of it? And then on the flip side, how do we also provide value to fertility clinics? So we went to fertility clinics, and we said, we're going to give you an interface where you can help a patient manage their regimen. You can use it. You don't have to. You can have them enter their own regimens. We just want to see if you like it. We want to see if you'll use it. So we ran a bunch of trials. We've trialed with huge clinics, Conceptions, Boston IVF, Columbia University, Mainline Fertility. And, we got a lot of really great feedback. And then, it started to make sense that we should really extend out towards the pharmacy space and put together a marketplace of pharmacies that can serve patients. And we can also provide that technology to the pharmacies to help them provide better patient care. So in the perfect, beautiful world, Best Shot, the application is for the patient. And then we have a pharmacy front end and a clinic front end too. So we're truly the connective tissue for patients undergoing specialty diseases. And we're starting with infertility because that's what we know. And, I think all of this is so much more bolstered if it has a really strong community back it up. So we're a direct to consumer product and we're community first. We want to be the fertility community's community pharmacy.
Amazing. So I think that's definitely inspiring, like the way, and you show the progression of almost how a startup weekend can inspire you to make that leap.
Yeah.
in the journey. Can you share a little bit more about how you found? I'm sure there's plenty of founders out there. How did you find your technical co-founder, and what
Oh,
were those first? I mean, you talked about your first prototype, but yeah, how did you
yeah.
find your co-founder?
Yeah. Oh man, I honestly got so lucky. I almost made a bunch of mistakes, honestly. I really, really, truly did. I think I'm glad I didn't offshore my technology. Like, I think that's important to know. Like, that wasn't good for me. I think this disease state is complex, that would have been hard. It probably would have, it been a mistake for us. Like, that works for some startups, but, it wasn't going to work for us. And honestly, I met Pear. We're a remote first company. But I met Pear through a mutual friend. So I was hosting I was very involved in like the energy startup community in Denver. So I was always hosting events for founders and obsessed with community. Like, community drives me forward. And it was an energy tech event that I was hosting at a brewery. And I was like up on stage, like interviewing a C-suite executive at a midstream company. And like, that's what I was doing there. But I took a break and I grabbed a beer with a former friend of mine from a startup that I had worked with. And he's like, what are you really up to? Like, you're going to stay at Altera? Like, what's the partner track look like? Like, your pre-partner right now, like, what's it look like? Like 5 years? And I was like, no, Dave, like, this is what's really going on. Like, I've got this like really cool thing going and like, it's kind of already designed. And anyway, I need a CTO. He was like, you got to meet my friend Pear. And I was like, Pear, like the fruit or like the dad in French? And so anyway, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll meet your neighbor. Like, so random, but whatever. And so anyway, I had coffee with Pear, and he had been with a company called RX Review, which is a Series B company here in town, doing pharmaceutical pricing transparency for health systems. And I was like, and he had left RX Review about a year prior. He was doing some contracting gigs on residential mortgages and building technology for that industry. And I said, I would love for you to come back in digital health with me. And he very reluctantly said yes out of the gates. And then we got into Techstars and he said, hell yes, let's do this. So it was so random. But, I think I had already I'd found a designer and a front-end developer. And luckily Pear is like totally a people person, an amazing manager. He's managed large technical teams. It's a superpower of his. And the front-end developer and the designer were able to just work seamlessly with Pear. And the three of us went through Techstars together, or the three of them went through Techstars with myself and an operations manager, Mackenzie. And so we're all just like a team of five, and we built most of the technology, most of V1 of our product in Techstars. So anyway, it's hard, but it's so important to find the right person.
Amazing. And you said before you're in Denver. Can you share a little bit more about um, you know what's unique about the Denver startup community?
Oh, yeah. It's so unique and so cool and just so supportive. When we were, I mean, our pre-seed round was not hard to raise because we had so much support from the local community. There are actually a lot of digital health companies here, and got a lot of support from other founders who came onto our cap table and said, "Hey, like, I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did. So like, I want to invest in you, and like talk is cheap. Like, I want to give you my money, and I want to help you make this something big." So, and like, I think that story alone just speaks to like how supportive this community is. And, I think that it's friendly. It's like, it's ragtag, like everybody's moved here from the coasts. You see a lot of like, people who used to live in New York, a lot of people who used to live in the Bay Area who have come to Denver for just a really high quality of life, lower cost of living, access to the mountains, just access to just like natural beauty that Denver offers. Not to say the coasts don't have natural beauty, but Denver is just like the Wild West, and like just there's so much like ambition and like so much to do here. But people, I was working on Wall Street, working like 100 hours a week, and that's not what people do here. People hustle smart, and definitely carve out time to just work on their whole person. And as I look at some of the startups that are being founded here and that are thriving here, like those founders are people that are humans that I really look up to. And I think, it's just the culture here. Like you're just a good, helpful, nice, kind person. So.
Amazing. No, thank you for sharing that insight. So if we're to take a step back also to talk about the particularly femtech innovation, and what are some tips in your eyes that we can do to better support female founders and founders focusing on like women as the female products?
Yeah. This one has so much hair on it. Such a loaded question. We can do so much more to support female founders, specifically in the femtech space. And, it's like women are making, why we should support like just women in healthcare in general. Like women are making healthcare decisions by and large. So, that's something that's important to note. Women also make up 50% of the population. So like, this is so obvious. And, things that we can do to support them. I mean, like who am I talking to when I talk to VCs? Mostly men. It would be awesome if I could talk to more women at the partner level. I'm seeing a lot more women at the associate and principal level, which is fantastic. But I wish I were able to interface with more female partners. So, supporting women and getting higher up the food chain at VCs, I think that's absolutely critical. I think what's also hard, and something I want to acknowledge as a former VC myself, is that a lot of kind of femtech funds, femtech specific funds, and funds focused on female founders, they're first time funds, and they can be very trigger shy, and they aren't taking the risks that I wish they could. Funding pre-seed, seed, Series A companies, like it's always going to be risky, but they can't take those risks as well because it's a first-time fund. So they want to be able to raise their subsequent funds more easily. They need returns. So I get it, but at some point we're going to have to take some risks. And I mean, there's very strong data to show how wonderful women are as leaders, and how leadership skills are different. And awesome when a female is at the helm. And that math is out there if you Google it. So yeah, super, super important topic. And it's definitely a ripple effect.
There's so much to do. Well, I know we're just approaching our time. So Abby, thank you very much. For those just tuning in, Abby Mercado, co-founder and CEO of Best Shot. Thanks for sharing your story today. And for those interested in finding Best Shot, you can find the link in the live stream notes. So thanks again for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.